What is the point of international cooperation in matters of shared concern? According to the UN Charter, its founding member nations were determined to achieve overarching societal progress based on human rights. Excerpt from the UN Charter. The international legal system of the UN era continues to attempt, with mixed success, to promote these goals. Within intricately connected global systems that produce ever more complex problems, a framework for international cooperation is essential. The international legal system, however imperfect, must be maintained as a bulwark against the wholesale pursuit of domestic political interests. Yet our belief in the efficacy of this system is challenged when the stark reality of international power relations is laid bare. It seems the more insight we have into what happens behind the scenes, the harder it becomes to convince the skeptical that international law has either legal or normative power. On Friday, The Washington Post published a leaked transcript of an infamous phone call between the then newly elected U.S. President, Donald Trump, and Australia's Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull. The shocking conversation reveals that the deal for the U.S. to accept some of those asylum seekers currently detained offshore, a key feature of the Australian government's effort to close its offshore detention centre on Manus Island, imposes no obligation on the U.S. beyond going through the process. According to Turnbull, the agreement does not require you to take 2,000 people. It does not require you to take any. Trump made it abundantly clear that he did not see either the U.S. national interest or his personal popularity being served by upholding the agreement. Boy, that will make us look awfully bad. Here I am calling for a ban where I am not letting anybody in and we take 2,000 people. Really, it looks like 2,000 people that Australia does not want, and I do not blame you, by the way, but the United States has become like a dumping ground. Further reading 5 quotes from the Turnbull-Trump call show the folly of Australia's refugee policy. Trading lives in a refugee swap. The deal between Australia and the US remains mired in confusion almost a year on. Australia committed to resettling some Central American refugees currently in Costa Rica, as part of a use-old program. Soon after, Turnbull announced an agreement with the Obama administration that would see the U.S. resettle perhaps 1,250 refugees currently detained on Manus Island and Nauru. The transcript confirms that Trump was resistant to inheriting what he described as a rotten deal. I hate taking these people. I guarantee you they are bad. That is why they are in prison right now. Turnbull sought to reassure Trump he could sell the agreement to the U.S. public as consistent with his campaign promise to tighten immigration controls. Turnbull emphasized his and Trump's shared identity as businessmen and represented the deal as a business transaction that ought to be upheld, at least formally. Please, if we can agree to stick to the deal, you have complete discretion in terms of a security assessment. The numbers are not 2,000 but 1,250 to start. Basically, we are taking people from the previous administration that they were very keen on getting out of the United States. We will take more. We will take anyone that you want us to take. The only people that we do not take are people who come by boat. So we would rather take a not very attractive guy that help you out than to take a Nobel Peace Prize winner that comes by boat. That is the point. Despite Trump's reluctance, U.S. immigration officials have conducted some screening interviews with refugees on Manus Island. However, these were suspended mid-run and the officials withdrew to the U.S. once it was announced that the U.S. annual humanitarian refugee quota had already been fulfilled. Those detained have been told that interviews will resume and that resettlement in the U.S. is still on the table. However, whether the Trump administration ever had any serious intention to be party to a resettlement solution is now in doubt, as is Turnbull's commitment to anything more than a domestic political win. On Manus Island, the leaked transcripts arrived amid heightened tensions. Protests have been ongoing since Tuesday, when water and power services were withdrawn in the largest compound. Local police, detention centre guards and reportedly the Australian Federal Police are attempting to remove those deemed prisoners by Trump, something that Turnbull, perhaps tellingly, did not dispute. This latest insight into the international game of trading unwanted human beings compounds the frustration and sense of injustice that those trapped in Australia's offshore detention system are experiencing. Proof that Australia fails to see the humanity of refugees. Turnbull's position appears to be that the people detained on Manus Island and Nauru are good and deserving of protection somewhere, but that his domestic political environment demands they must be treated like criminals. In the call, Turnbull repeatedly refers to the people imprisoned on Manus Island and Nauru as economic refugees. This pernicious framing is consistent with government messaging about boat people and queue jumpers. In reality, no refugees are accepted on economic grounds under Australia's rules. It is disingenuous of Turnbull to make such an inference about those detained in offshore detention, considering that almost 90% of those on Manus Island have been assessed as bona fide refugees by both Australia and the UNHCR. Turnbull's indifference to human suffering is chilling, surprising even Trump. We should do that too. You are worse than I am. When two of the most powerful men in the world conspire to inflict further harm on some of the world's most vulnerable to satisfy domestic agendas, we truly need to question whether the goals of the international community as constituted in the UN are being upheld by our elected officials. Dehumanizing refugees and treating them as the problem avoids any serious consideration of why people are displaced. This is where the international community should be working together. Adopting a punitive approach to those seeking protection not only goes against international law, but it is an insult to those that uphold Australia and the US as leading beacons for human rights and freedom.